Alrighty, so it's almost 11, and since we have a lot of content to present, I'm actually going to go ahead and start with the presentation. First, I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for being here today to hear about Dynamic CRM. My name is Humberto Lizama, and I'm a program manager for the Dynamic CRM team. Also here today with us is going to be Ben Riga, who is a senior manager in the evangelism team focusing on CRM. And just to give you a little bit of background about me, I've been with the team for about 2 years now, and I work in what we internally call the platform team. So the personas that I care about in the team are developers, architects, and partners that build solutions on top of CRM and basically use CRM as a platform. Before I go into the objectives for this session, I need your help. Could you please raise your hand if you are already familiar with Dynamic CRM? All right, just to confirm that, who is not familiar with CRM? Right, so it's about half and half. So I actually have content for both of those audiences. We're going to be showing an introduction at the beginning, and we're also going to show a lot of new content for those that are already familiar with Dynamic CRM. So today's objectives, we have 3 main objectives. The first one is going to demonstrate how to quickly and easily build appealing business applications on top of Dynamic CRM. We're going to do a demonstration, and we're going to actually take you how you actually build and use CRM as a platform. Then we're going to explain how you can leverage Dynamic CRM as one of your developer services in conjunction with other Windows Azure services, and we're going to have a pretty cool demo about that. And at the very end, and this is my personal favorite because I spend most of my time working on this project, I'm actually going to show you the next version of Dynamic CRM, which we internally call Dynamic CRM 5. I'm actually going to show you very early bits of Dynamic CRM 5, and it's very exciting because it's the first time ever that we're going to show these bits in public. As I mentioned, I do have a lot of content. So one favor that I want to ask you is that if you have any questions, if you can please hold your questions to the end. I would really appreciate that so we can actually get to all of the presentation and all of the demos that we have for today. So let's jump right away and start with the first objective, demonstrate how you can quickly and easily build appealing business applications on top of Dynamic CRM. First, let's try to define what we're talking about when we refer to appealing business applications. We usually think about end users and things like charts, 3D, productivity tools for end users. But my question here is, what about developers? What about making the tools and the engine that developers use appealing so that they can quickly and easily build applications on top of our platform? That is exactly where Dynamic CRM comes in. What if you can imagine that the tools are so easy to use and so intuitive that not only developers but also end users can take advantage of? As I mentioned, that's where Dynamic CRM comes into play. For those of you that don't know what CRM actually stands for, it's Customer Relationship Management, and it's usually associated with things like sales, service, and marketing. That's not what I'm going to be talking about here today. I'm not going to be talking about traditional CRM. I'm going to be talking about CRM as a development platform that you can take advantage of. And these are all the things that CRM provides you right out of the box that you can take advantage. Things like security, manageability, schema modeling, multiple clients, online, offline, multiple deployments. And all of that is packaged right out of the box in CRM, and it's only a matter of you as a developer of taking advantage of that. Something that I really want to highlight, because it really strongly messages out the software plus services strategy from Microsoft, is that Dynamic CRM is one of the first, it was one of the first products to actually run everywhere. We run on premises, we run on the cloud, Microsoft hosted, and we also run partner hosted. And it is fundamentally the same code base. So you can actually expect the same kind of capabilities regardless of where your application is running. There's going to be a session, it's actually right after this session, with David Schott, the main architect from CRM, and he's going to actually explain how we were able to take the previous version of CRM, CRM 3.0, and move that into the cloud. He's actually going to explain all the architectural patterns and all the refactoring that we had to do, so we were actually able to take this approach and give you the power of choice. So keep this in mind. This is very, very important. We run everywhere. Now let's talk about a little bit of the CRM, about the CRM architecture. We are fundamentally a layer application. At the bottom, we have our data services. We run on top of SQL Server 2008 and SQL Server 2005. And we have several customization alternatives there, such as using SRS reports. But I'm not going to be talking about those extensively in this session. In the middle, we have what we call our platform layer. And that's where all our web services and all our business logic sits. And you can also extend this layer. There's going to be a session on Wednesday with Andrew Bybee that's going to be focusing solely on this layer. It's actually going to show you how to extend that. It's going to show a very cool demo of how we're now going to be able to run C#, well, .NET code on the cloud as part of Dynamics CRM Online. So that's going to be very, very, very interesting. What I'm going to be focusing in this session is what I call the appealing side. Right? And I call that because that's where all the UI and all the productivity tools come into play. And yeah, I like my smiley there. It's the appealing side, and it talks about interacting with the web services and creating custom UI on top of CRM and taking advantage of our platform. So that's what this session is going to be mostly focused on. I'm about to jump into my first demonstration. As I mentioned, we're going to have a lot of demos, so I want to make this quick. This is the scenario that we're going to be talking about. It's an event management scenario. We have several components. We have CRM, where we actually generate events, and we push that to the web. And we also have a component that's going to be a custom portal that's going to talk back to the CRM web services, and it's going to consume that information so participants can register that. And then we're going to have workflows that are actually going to kick in whenever we receive campaign responses. Now, building this solution end-to-end will take perhaps a couple of hours, not much, but we don't have a couple of hours. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to focus on several specific aspects. I'm going to show you how to customize the navigation. I'm going to show you a little bit of the portal, and I'm also going to show you a little bit of workflow. Now, this is new for those that are already familiar with CRM. Fundamentally, the code that I'm actually going to be using in this demonstration is what we call one of the CRM accelerators. So this code is going to be released to the public. The source is going to be available to you, so you can take advantage of that. So please keep that in mind. So I'm about to jump to my first demo. Let me quickly switch here to my laptop. All right, so this is the interface for those of you that have never seen CRM. We probably saw that watch for the first time during the keynote. This is how it looks like. This is the web client, but we also have an Outlook client that Ben is going to be helping me demonstrate the Outlook client. This is how it looks like. You notice that it has a familiar Outlook interface. Let me quickly walk you to the scenario that I just described. So we have campaigns in CRM. For example, I can open a PDC campaign. This is of type event. And I have event-related data model, things like the event name, event topic. And I also have custom objects like the primary venue, for example. In this case, it's the Los Angeles Convention Center, and I have some custom fields in there. On the other side of the solution, I have the portal that's actually consuming that same information and exposing that to the web. So I'm publishing that into a custom web portal, and participants can select the event, whatever they want, and register for that event. Whenever I register here, let me just quickly fill this in. Really, the data doesn't matter right now, just to show you the functionality. For those of you that actually want my address, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm just kidding. That's my postal code, actually. So, phone. Current customer. Yes, what's my primary role? I'm a decision maker, and I really love email. So I can register that, and that's going to send that information to CRM. I can open that campaign, and I can see that I'm going to have a campaign response with the information that I just submitted. So that's pretty straightforward, very easy to understand the scenario. Now let's take a look at how all these pieces come together. Let's actually modify the application. You notice, one of the things that you notice is that whenever I open, for example, a venue here in the event details, I have this section for a custom image, but it's not displaying anything right now. and that's because I'm actually going to do some modifications on the fly here. So I'm going to go to the magic section, and I call this the magic section, one, because I actually own that section as a program manager in the team, so I really like this section, but also because it's where CRM gets customized, where you can actually build custom applications on top of CRM. And that is a customization section. David Thompson actually showed this during the keynote. I'm going to go to customize entities. I'm going to filter by my custom entities. You can see that we have several entities that are particular just for this scenario and are only related to event management. So it's basically a custom solution for CRM. Then I'm going to open the venue entity. I'm going to add a schema on the fly. You notice that all of these tools are very easy to use, very intuitive. So I'm actually going to add a new attribute. I'm going to call that image URL. It's going to be a type varchar. We have several different types here that I can pick from. You can think of this as primitives. So I'm going to save that and close it. And just like that, I'm creating custom schema for CRM. This is not only creating the column in the backend SQL Server, but it's also refreshing our whistle so you can actually take advantage of this entity in a strongly typed manner. I'm actually going to show you that in Visual Studio. So let me just publish, before publishing, now let me actually add that field to my custom form so I can actually take advantage of that field. So I'm going to go to the custom image section. I'm going to add a field. Here's the field that I just added, just showing up right away. Let me customize a little bit of formatting. Actually, I want to show that in 2 columns. And now I want to wire up, so whatever URL I show that, I can actually display in the iframe. Pretty basic case scenario. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to modify the properties of the form, and you can notice that I can customize events, and I can add my own custom JavaScript. I already have this JavaScript prepared, and it's just a matter of enabling the event. And basically what this JavaScript is doing is reading the custom field, wiring that up, and displaying that on the source of the iframe. So very straightforward. So I'm going to save that, save and close it, and I'm going to publish this. Let me just double check here. I'm sorry? Oh, right. Okay, sorry about that. Let me just redo that very quick. I actually misspelled the attribute. So let me just go, let me remove that from the form first. Save and close, and now let me remove that attribute. So as quickly as I was able to create the attribute, I can now remove it. I actually misspelled that attribute. And because I misspelled the schema name, which is the identifier, I have to remove it. Okay, I didn't publish that, so that was expected. Let me just publish that quickly. It's published in the form. Now I'm actually going to be able to remove it. Quick. It's deleting that attribute, and it's also regenerating the whistle. And now let's do that right again. So image URL. That's correct. Good. Thank you for pointing that out. That will have blown my demo. But that gives you a very good sense, and it was actually a good thing that they made that mistake, because I was able to show you how you can actually remove a schema and not only add schema. So let me drop that quickly here. Image URL, double check, move that up, change properties, formatting to columns, and let me make sure that I still have that event there. Also good. Save and close. Let me publish this. And then let's actually look at what is the end result of doing this. Save and close. And let me go to the marketing section, campaigns. Open up a venue. For example, Los Angeles Convention Center. Custom image, I have my field there. So let me just add an image that I'm pretty sure I have there. It's not in the Staples Center, we know. We're in the, actually, I do have the LA Convention Center. Save that. And if all things work fine, there we go. We have that image right there. So it was pretty easy to do. Now, you notice that the navigation was a bit clunky. It's not really tailored for event management. It's still the traditional sales, marketing, and service. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to quickly import a customized navigation that I already have prepared for this demonstration. And it's basically an XML file with custom navigation sections for my custom solution. So I'm just going to import that so we can import and export solutions. I have that. I'm going to import that. And when the import is done, it's going to take just a couple of seconds. And it's just a matter of refreshing my application. And you're going to see that we're going to have customized navigation. So I'm going to have event management. And now I have access to my custom objects, things like campaigns and event venues. So that was pretty straightforward. Now, what if I want to consume that also on my portal? What if I want to display this custom image also as part of my portal? And that's when the Visual Studio experience is going to come into play. So let me just quickly close this, go to my Visual Studio project. This is a standard .NET application. You can see that I actually have web references to my web services, the CRM SDK and the metadata SDK. Let me show you quickly a little bit about the code. This is pretty straightforward code that, just like with any web reference, is creating an instance of the service. So I'm just creating the service and passing in some configuration parameters. Next, this is kind of like the business logic driving the portal. I'm actually executing a query against all the published campaigns, using the query language from CRM, retrieving that campaign, and then I'm consuming that in a custom control, which is a standard .NET custom control. Now, you notice I have here a section where I can insert custom code. And what I'm going to do is I want to take advantage of that new field that I just added and expose that also to the web. So I already have my snippet here. It's pretty straightforward, which is basically retrieving the venue for that campaign and displaying that information, the image on the web. So you notice that I actually have strongly typed objects inside Visual Studio. So I can take advantage of all the fields that that object has. For example, if I look at my venue and then I dot whatever, I have all the fields that I have in CRM, but I also have custom fields. You notice that all the ones that are prefixed MSA are actually custom attributes. Not many applications there actually let you do this. Customize your system and also have strongly typed objects when you're working with Visual Studio. So that is pretty powerful. So the code is good as it was originally, so let me just run this. It's going to compile, and it's going to launch the portal. Go to event listen, and I can see that I'm now displaying the image. The other ones don't actually have an image, therefore the image is not going to show up. But the one that we just added is showing up properly. So that was pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use. Now, let me quickly close this project and show you a bit about workflow. Just as easy as I was able to add custom schema, I can also add custom logic into my application. I'm going to go to the workflow section in CRM. I'm actually going to create a new workflow from scratch. I'm going to call my PDC workflow. And what I want to do here is that whenever I receive a campaign response from a participant, I want to do a follow-up. I want to either send an email or I want to send a follow-up task, and I want to build that logic inside CRM. So what I'm going to do here is create a workflow. It's going to operate on the campaign response entity. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to do it very simple because, as I mentioned, we have a lot of demos, and I want to give enough time for the new stuff. I'm going to add a step, a quick check condition. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to check if the campaign if the parent campaign of the campaign response is actually of type event, otherwise I don't want to do anything. So I'm going to look at the parent campaign, and I'm going to see if the campaign type equals campaign event. So that was a very simple check condition. And then I want to do something. I actually want to execute something. So I'm going to add a quick create record. I'm going to create a follow-up task. And I can send dynamic parameters as part of my workflow. Follow up on, and I can insert, for example, the topic of the campaign response, the subject. Oops. Subject there, okay. I'm going to save and close. This is going to be very simple. I can save and close this workflow, and I can now publish that. And just like that, I was able to create custom logic. It's now publishing, which means that the workflow is now going to be running. And I'm going to simulate the registration here, but you can imagine this is going to be the same thing if the participants actually register. So I'm just going to create a campaign response here, a new one. The only required field right now is the subject. Save and close that. I created that, the workflow kicked in, and now I should have a follow-up task. So if I go to my workplace and check on activities, it's still not showing up. The workflow should be running right now. Come on, come on, come on. Let me actually go and check on my running workflows. This one is not running. All right, there we go. Let's see if it's showing up now. It's not showing up. Oh, there we go. It took a little bit to actually process. And I have the follow-up task, and I can actually see that the parameter that I passed in dynamically is actually being populated. And I did that without having to write a single line of code. Everything was web-based, pretty straightforward. All right, so I'm going to switch back to the presentation. That was kind of like a brief introduction into CRM, what you can do with the current version of CRM. This was CRM 4. Let me quickly switch to the presentation and just do a bit of a rehash of what we just watched. We have a bunch of out-of-the-box tools for different personas. We didn't touch on the ones for system administrators because that's not the audience that is present in this session. But we did touch on a bunch of tools for developers and business analysts. And the important point of this slide is that there are some tools that actually fall in the middle of both personas. So, for example, the workflow editor, you can think of a scenario in which you as a developer create the workflow initially, you hand that over to business analysts, and then now suddenly the business analyst can keep giving maintenance to that workflow and leave you time to actually do some more interesting things. And talking about interesting things, you notice that the portal that I actually had wasn't really that appealing. It was actually very simple. And that's why because we're actually going to have a demo that I actually put the title as taking appealing to the next level, and that's because I haven't seen a cooler demo of CRM in my life. Quite honest. I mean, it's very, very cool. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ben Riga. Ben?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yours.
How can I follow that setup? Let me switch over to laptop 1. Laptop 2. There we go. So you probably saw Dave Thompson this morning in the keynote. He did a session where he talked about this interesting professional services company that's running dynamic CRM, but they've customized it completely. And Umberto went into a little bit of detail on how they did it. And so you can see that there's this this UI that's very CRM-like. It actually takes advantage of sort of a Outlook look and feel. And in fact, you can take that exact UI and pull it directly into Outlook. And that's one of the key things that you'll see with dynamic CRM is that ability to build something in CRM, pull it into Outlook as a developer. And so you'll notice that I'm in Outlook. I have my inbox here. And also within Outlook, I have this additional tree of navigation where I can actually navigate to different things. So for instance, Dave this morning showed timesheets. And so looking at timesheets within the CRM web UI is the same as looking at timesheets within the CRM UI within Outlook. Usually it's better when it's not white. And I'm not sure why it's doing that. So let me just make sure that I still have. You'll notice that I'm on CRM Online here, and here I am actually okay. So let's go online. So one of the things I was going to talk about was the fact that CRM, one of the capabilities, one of the platform capabilities of CRM is that you can actually take your data and take it offline. So when you create a custom entity, you can actually look at that custom entity from within the UI when you're online, but you can also look at it when you're offline. The way it does that is it actually pulls it into Outlook. It has a SQL database that it stores locally, and it runs a web server that it runs locally, so that as you're doing different activities, so for instance, if you're making changes to your data when you're offline, so for instance, in the scenario that I was about to do, okay, I guess we're going to stay offline. Okay. We're still offline, but we can see timesheets. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, but so there's my timesheet, the same timesheet that we saw earlier that Dave Thompson was looking at. In fact, it's the exact same organization that Dave was looking at. We can look at here. Now, obviously, when you're building UI, there are some things that work really well in web UI, like this sort of Ajax form where CRM is doing a lot of the work for you. In many cases, you'll want to take advantage of some of the other platform capabilities that you have in the client. And this is one of the things we did here. So for instance, in a professional services organization, I don't know how many of you have done that before. One of the things that you probably hate to do is at the end of the week building timesheets. And so what we wanted to do was build this immersive experience where you would actually enjoy building timesheets. So here I am as a project lead. I've finished my week at a customer site. I've now gotten on the plane. I pop open my laptop. So obviously I'm offline, but I want to be able to do my timesheets. And in fact, I just got an email from the system telling me, you're due to do your timesheets. And so what we've done is taken the data that's in CRM, we've pulled it offline, and we're taking advantage of that offline data to build applications against it. In this case, it's a WPF application that takes advantage of some of the platform capabilities that you get from Windows. One of the things that you get from WPF, things that you can't do in the web, is ability to access local data. So for instance, I would not be able to get access, in this case, to Outlook data. Obviously, you don't want web apps looking at data that's locally. With a WPF application, I can do that. And in fact, as a professional, that's probably where I keep most of my time. That's where all my meetings are and all my things. So I can actually pull that into my timesheet and do data entry on that. And of course, I can also pull data directly from CRM. And here we're making a web service call, pulling in my work items so that now I've pulled in all of the things that I know I've worked on this week. I have different work items. I have my meetings that I've had. And now I'm looking at it from within a UI where I could look at it in a much easier way. I can also do some data entry here. Obviously, we know the project you may have worked on, but we probably don't know the category of what that is. And so we can actually do some data entry. Or let's make it a different color here. And save that. And just for fun, I'm going to select a bunch here and just save that, just so we have some data to work with in the demo here. And save that. And so I have some data that I'm looking at. And I can look at that data in any way I choose. I can also, so from this perspective, I'm using WPF to give the end user, in this case a professional, a much more immersive experience when they're doing timesheet entry, something that makes it a little bit easier, and hopefully, as a result, will encourage them to do their timesheets more often. In addition to that, I'm also giving them the ability to look at some of that data, to visualize the data in different ways. And so here, we're looking at the same data, but we're looking at the month view. And so I can look at that from a quarter view. And of course, we're in October, so we can look at the previous quarter and so on, and then even perhaps look at the year view. One of the things that I may want to look at is the ability to compare how I'm working with my team members. And so you're starting to add lots of dimensions. And in fact, the easiest way to do that would be to look at it in a three-dimensional view. And here again, we're taking advantage of some of the platform capabilities of WPF. Again, this is not something that would be very easy to do in other types of applications. So here I can look at different team members and look at how they would, how they've been working in various projects. And of course, I can change from category to projects so that I can look at the various details. So I think you'll agree that some of the capabilities that WPF provides you give you a lot more capability than what you would normally be able to do in a web-type application. And certainly, we encourage you to take advantage of those things as you're building applications that require that sort of functionality. The one thing that WPF doesn't give you is the ability to build applications that are on the web. And naturally, you may have heard, we have another product that does something very similar. It's called Silverlight, and we take advantage of that to do different things. So let me come back to my web UI. In here, I'm looking at various pieces of information. Of course, I can customize that and look at the different details related to resources. So another scenario might be that a customer has asked me to look at adding a couple of projects. And in order to do that, I need to be able to figure out when I can start on those projects. In order to figure out when I can start on those projects, I need to know when my team members are working on various pieces of other projects. And you start to get into some weird sort of calculations and looking at things in different ways. And so what we want to do was make that easier and also make that available via the web. And so we have what we call a forecast dashboard. And so here, we've actually built this sort of composite application where we're looking at different things. We're looking at different pieces of information that are provided by CRM. So we have our funnel chart, so we know when projects are coming. We have the list of active projects, so we know what projects are sort of in the hopper, in the queue. And then we also have this forecast dashboard UI, which is actually pulling data from CRM, combining it together, and providing me a list of my team members and when they're working on different things. So as I add different team members, so here I can add myself, David Alexander, you can see that I'm working on a couple of projects. So that transparent glass tube would be my time available, and then the red would be the Contoso portal, and the blue would be the Fourth Coffee website that we're working on. Of course, I can continue adding team members, and as I do that, the thing sort of expands out, and if I click team, it's showing me my entire team. So now I have a pretty good idea over the next few weeks and months even, how much time I have and what my various people are working on. And I can drill down and look at the various things. So if I look at any of these, I can actually verify that we actually have different team members that are working on important pieces of information. So this is sort of an interesting way to add and display information. It's actually, in fact, sort of customized bar charts. One of the things I can do is add the unallocated. So I have projects that have been added, and they've sort of been added at certain times. But you'll notice that when I added those projects, I haven't allocated them to team members yet, and so they're unallocated. But when I add them, you notice they're going above the glass. And so as a result of that, it means that I'm going to be over. I'm going to have either customers that are not happy because they're not getting their stuff on time, and I'm probably going to have staff members that are upset because they're working overtime. And so what I would want to do, and this is where Silverlight becomes sort of interesting in that you're not only just showing the information, but you're allowing end users to interact with that information. And so I can flip into edit mode. And as I do that, obviously, you'll notice that the unallocated are sort of glowing. And as a result, that's sort of a visual cue that tells me that I can move these things around and try and move them into areas so that I know that whoops. Looks like, okay. So yeah, that's probably not what we wanted. So you get the idea. The idea there is obviously you want to take advantage of Silverlight, not just for displaying the visual information, but also allowing end users to interact with that information and actually manipulate that information. And actually, by manipulating that information, changing the way that they work and hopefully making them a lot more productive. So I'm going to hand it back to Umberto so he can show. Oh, actually, one of the things I wanted to show, Umberto, before I do that,
Sure.
is that there was some code running behind there. The one thing that was kind of interesting is how easy it is to do things like pulling data online and offline. All of that is actually provided functionally by Outlook, and you can actually change your applications, and it's actually pretty trivial to do that. So here I have my Get CRM service, and typically we would just look at setting my CRM service URL and so on, and I can actually, by looking at, here I have my is CRM offline call. It's simply one call to check whether the CRM service is online or offline, and then take advantage of that to change which URL we're programming against. So here we're setting one CRM web service URL when we're offline, and then if we're online, then we can take advantage and do it in a different way. So I wanted to make that point that the things that you do, Umberto already talked about the fact that from a deployment perspective, when you're building your applications, you build them once. They'll work on-premise. They'll work in a data center, in a partner-hosted data center, or they'll work in CRM Online. Also, as you're writing your code, that's the exact same thing. You can write the code so that it runs in CRM Online, CRM partner-hosted, or CRM on-premises, and basically give that power of choice to your customers. Let them choose where you can run your code and where they can keep their data. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Umberto.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Yeah. That was pretty cool, huh? Not the errors, but the actual graphs. When we were working to this session, I was actually kind of hesitant to show that demo because it had so many cool things around. I mean, Silverlight, WPF. I mean, I don't think you can get even cooler. So I was like, well, if we actually show that, what I'm actually going to show after that. But turns out that I actually have a bunch of cool stuff that I'm actually going to be able to show you today, and that's pretty exciting. So we covered already the first objective. We talked about CRM. We gave you an introduction. We gave you a couple of demos. And now we're going to be talking about how you can leverage dynamic CRM in the context of other cloud services. So you probably pay a lot of attention to this diagram during the keynote, and that's because you're probably going to see this slide over and over and over through all the presentations, and it basically depicts what is the strategy from Microsoft all up around cloud services. You also notice that CRM is actually named there. Oops, I actually hit the wrong button. Okay, you actually notice that CRM is actually named there twice. It's dynamic CRM Online, but we are also a building block service, developer service. And that's why, because as we just demonstrated during this presentation, you can take advantage of CRM outside of the traditional customer relationship management, but more as a platform. And you can not only do that, but combine that with other cloud services. So what I'm going to be doing here is that you remember the previous scenario, event management. You notice that we have the custom web portal, but that custom web portal was running locally. So what I'm going to be doing now, I'm actually going to be running that on Windows Azure. And I'm actually going to show you the development fabric, how all those things come together. And the main point here is that it is fundamentally the same code. So you're going to need the same set of skills, and you can take advantage of all the things that you already know. So let me actually flip to my demo machine and demonstrate how Windows Azure and CRM can play nice together. Oops, it's not it. There we go. Back to my machine. So you remember we have this scenario in which we had campaigns, and we had the custom web portal. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to launch Visual Studio, and I'm going to open a cloud service, a cloud project, crmcloud.aspx. The first thing you're going to notice is that it looks almost exactly the same as the other project that I had. But this is actually a cloud project. If you remember in the Hello World demonstration, it is very easy to use. I actually have installed the Red Dog SDK on my machine. I also have the Visual Studio extension, so that gives me access to projects that I can target to the cloud. So I have these cloud services here, and I actually created a web cloud service. When I look at my solution components, I can see that I have my CRM Cloud project here, and underneath I have fundamentally a web application. You can see that the code that I have behind here, if we switch quickly to global.cs, is exactly the same code. I mean, the same, literally the same. I copy-pasted that code from my traditional ASP application into a cloud project, and it is the same code. The same goes for campaign logic, the same goes for the event listing, and I can even reuse the same code snippet that I had before here. Code snippets, add image information, and I can compile that and run it, and what you're going to see is that it may appear that it's actually launching a local web server, and it is, but it's not the traditional Cassini or the traditional local host, traditional local server launched by Visual Studio. It's actually launching the developer fabric. That is a simulation of the cloud in my machine. Okay, so that is launching. It's going to take a while to launch the first time. What you're going to see two things. First, the portal is going to pop up and the UI is going to show up. But you're also going to see the development fabric UI, and that is something that you didn't see during the keynote. The development fabric UI actually popping up and let me monitor my instances. So that is the web UI. It's taking a bit to load. Let's just give it a second. And now in the back, you actually see the development fabric. This actually comes with the RedDoc SDK. So you can see that I have my web role here, and I have one instance running. And it's giving me login capability, so I can see what is actually happening. And I have one web role here, and I have one instance. When I go back here, it's still processing. It's just going to take a little bit to load the first time. Let's just give it a couple of seconds. It's actually initializing. There we go, there we go. Come on, come on, come on. I actually feel that this is one of the reasons why they actually did pull out the UI from the keynote, because it takes so much time to actually get started. But let's just give it a second, and there we go. It's actually running. So you can see this, the same code. I added the same piece of C# code, and it's running, and it's doing exactly the same thing. And that's the main point. You can take your .NET skills and use that to create web projects and deploy it into the cloud. Now, I'm not going to get into the details on how all these things come together, or how you now move this into the real cloud, because there are going to be plenty of sessions about that during PDC. What I'm gonna do during this demo is that, let me just quickly come back here and just make sure that the registration is actually working. All right, that's working. I'm gonna destroy this instance of my deployment. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to configure my cloud application to run not only in one instance, but in multiple instances. So I'm basically scaling out. And as they demonstrated during the keynote, that's just a matter of actually configuring that in my service definition. So if I go and look at my solution, I have my definition here. Oops, this is not the right one, the configuration, sorry. And right now I only have one instance. I can just edit this and say, run this on 3 instances, and just like that, now my simulation is going to run on 3 instances. It's just a matter of now launching that again. Again, it's probably going to take a little bit just to boot. But that's going to allow me to simulate how my web application is going to be load balanced across multiple instances. So this time I actually launched a lot faster. And you can actually see that I have now 3 instances running, and the one that is actually getting hit, I can actually see the 3 instances here. The application is running. And one of the things that you're going to notice that it is different in my code here is that I have access to this namespace called Microsoft.servicehosting.service_runtime. And those are fundamentally classes that are only applicable for the cloud. And I can do things like, for example, send events to the log. Send messages to the log, sorry. So in this case, I'm using one of their classes from the service hosting role manager, and I'm writing to the log and saying, I'm retrieving my published campaigns, retrieve is complete, basically debugging my application. So this launch, that's OK. And right now, the logs are not getting pulled. Let's actually try to refresh this to see if we actually get some logs. 5. Refreshing, processing. 1, 2, 3. All right, there we go. The logs are not appearing right now. Well, it's a community technology preview, so it's kind of expected that it's a little bit buggy. Well, you can see the point. I'm actually targeting now the cloud, so that is pretty exciting. Okay, so let me quickly flip back to the presentation, and I'm actually glad because I have plenty of time to talk about the most exciting portion of this session, which is CRM5. All right, so the last objective here, and I bet that many of you that are already familiar with CRM are actually waiting just for this portion of the session. It's what is new in CRM5. Now, before I flip to the next slide, let me tell you a couple of things. First, I'm not going to be talking about, so please don't even ask me, about release dates, SKUs, or anything that has to do with licensing or release dates, again. So I'm not going to be talking about that today. I'm also not going to be talking about any feature that I'm not going to include as part of my demonstration, basically because many of these things are still built on the planning process, and we're still developing a lot of this content, a lot of this code. All right, so let's flip. So this is probably the slide that you want to take a picture of. CRM5B next main features. We have features across all the board. We have around user experience, a lot of features also around collaboration, but also a lot of features around our platform investments. One of the massive investments that we're doing for CRM5 is what we call solution management. I'm actually going to demonstrate that as part of my demo. Instead of actually, I could actually easily spend 1 hour or more in each one of these small bullet points. But instead of doing that, I actually try to condense that into my demonstration. So I'm actually going to show you real bits of CRM5. All right, so I'm actually going to move. So if you were planning to take a picture, do it now because you're not going to see it again. I saw a couple of flashes going on. Okay, there you go. Okay, let's go back. All right, so let's see CRM5 in action. Let's roll it. So this is how the UI looks like. You notice that the command presentation is different. The navigation looks kind of similar, but it's actually different. Let me actually open a record so you can actually see what I mean by different. We used to pop a lot of windows and during a previous version of CRM. Now, whenever I open a record here, you're going to notice a couple of things. It is actually opening inline, the navigation goes away, and you notice that we have a richer set of controls. I have a subgrid here, that whenever I click on a contact, the command bar is actually context sensitive and gives me commands that are applicable for context because I have selected a contact here. If I go back to my account, I can still work with my account commands. If I want to pull back my navigation, I can do so. Right now, I only happen to know that I have to click there, but there's actually going to be a visual clue to actually let you know that you have to click here. And the navigation comes back. You also notice that it's now a long page, and we no longer have this concept of tabs in the traditional sense. We still have quick access navigation. So if I want to go to my details, it's just a matter of clicking here. You notice that it's actually a long page, a scrollable long page, and all my information is in there, but I can still quickly navigate here. So that is one thing. Let's close this record. Something else that is pretty exciting in CRM5 is the notion of data analysis and data charting. So I'm going to click on my data view tab here for a second. And you notice that we have a bunch of new commands there. One of them is, for example, filtering. So we now have filter like Excel, similar to Excel. So if I want to filter this, I want to say I want to apply a custom filter. Begins with, for example, peak. The filter is getting applied. The GUI is getting refreshed. I don't have to go to Advanced Find anymore. Advanced Find is still there, but you can do that now in context. So that's pretty exciting. let me just reset the filter. I'm just going to turn it off. And you probably notice this bright icon here that says charts. So what is all of that about? Let me just click quickly here, and you can see that now we have inline charts. This is not SRS. These are inline charts built into the application. And I also have drill down capabilities now built into the application. I can just click here, and I can, for example, I want to see my Fabricant opportunities, and I want to do that. I want to split that by a rating of my opportunities, and I want to see, let's say, a pie chart. I can do that, and I can get that inline drill down capabilities inside the application. And that is now built into CRM. That's pretty exciting. You should be clapping now. This is pretty cool. Come on. All right. So that's about charting. Now, let's look at, you notice that I also have my custom navigation here, event management. And let's look at, for example, campaigns. I was already there. Look at PDC. And you notice that we have a slightly different, well, not slightly, actually it's radically different form model. I can now have different, I can accommodate my controls in a different way. You notice that, for example, here, my labels are at the top instead of actually being on the left. You also notice that I have now inline subgrids, just like what we had in the account entity. Now I have an inline subgrid in my control. Now, we also have richer, smarter lookups. So, for example, in this case, this campaign has an expected attendance of 12,000 attendees. And my sponsor, it's Staples Company. That's my main sponsor. So what I want to do is that whenever I click on venue, I want to filter that by the sponsor. So I already set all that up. I'm actually going to show you how this happens. This is the end result. You can see that we have this filter by related sponsor. So my sponsor here is Staples, and I'm actually filtering that by that sponsor. I can remove that filter, and you can actually see that we have other campaigns there. So that is now built into our platform. Now, you also notice that my expected attendance is 12,000, and I now have the ability to inject custom filters, so filter lookups, and I have filter based on expected capacity. So that's a custom filter. I'm actually going to show you how this happens also. I do that, and it only shows me the one that have at least 12,000, that are going to be able to accommodate at least 12,000 attendees. So it's also pretty exciting. So that is good. Let me save and close this. And now let's look at, for example, venues. Let me open this. And you notice that we have now other form constructs. We have this thing that we call the header and the footer. And those things are just like header and footers in, for example, Excel or Word. And I can move my form around, but these pieces of information remain there. And that's going to be very useful for information that you want to always have available. So, for example, the name of the event, the sponsor, and the maximum capacity are always on my screen. I can scroll up, back and forth, but those things are immutable, are always there. And the same goes for the footer. I'm displaying the website here, and that thing it's unmutable. So that is also pretty cool. And now let's close this and look at sponsors. As I mentioned, we have a different presentation for a command bar, and that command bar is going to be fully customizable. So in this case, I have my custom tab here, and I have custom buttons, and I can inject custom JavaScript. So that is going to be fully customizable. You can add, remove, whatever you want. All right, so that's kind of like the end result. Let's look at how things work. How do you actually go about building all of this? Let me close this. Let's go to the magic section, customizations. And the first thing you're going to notice is that customized entities is gone. Are we crazy? A little bit. But no. The fact is that now, as I mentioned before, we have made a huge investment around what we call solution management. So now every customization that you perform in CRM has the notion of a solution. So you as an ISV, you as a partner, you as a developer are actually building that solution that sits on top of CRM. When I click on solutions here, you're going to notice I have a couple of them. We have the default solution, which kind of replaces the custom entities grid. It's just the default solution that is a place, kind of like a placeholder that points to every object in the system. but I also have this custom solution called Events for CRM. When I open this solution, you notice that we have now things like versions. So we have now a first-class container for your components. You also notice that we have software publishers associated with solutions, and that software publisher actually has a namespace associated with that publisher. So whatever new objects I create from my solution, they're going to be assigned this new namespace. When I look at the solution components here, I can see that I only have the components for my solution, so I'm working with the system entity campaign. I also have country, which is a new object that didn't exist in previous version, which is a multiple option set. In other words, this is a global pick list that I can actually reuse across multiple entities. We didn't have that before. That is actually brand new. We can also include workflows and standard custom entities. And we are planning to add support for a bunch more custom components, things like, for example, plugins. We're thinking about doing things with plugins too. So you can expect to see this set of components to grow as CRM progresses. I can create new components. I can also add existing. I'm actually going to come back to add existing in the last portion of this demo. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to open the campaign entity and show you a little bit of what happened with the form and with the custom filters on the lookups. So I'm going to go to the form. I'm going to open it. You're also going to see that the form editor looks different, and that we now have a pretty cool thing, which is drag and drop. Right? So I now have drag and drop. I can drag and drop fields. I can drag and drop complete sections. Come on, that's pretty cool. That's going to save you like 1,000 clicks. And we also have, let's look at, for example, the filters that we had, how we were able to filter whenever I selected a sponsor, how we were able to filter the venue. If I click on venue, I can see the formatting in the display section. We have now special properties for lookups, and we have this thing called the related records filter. You can think of this as kind of like dependent lookups. I'm going to get a bit technical here, but what we are actually doing here is we are traversing the relationships graph and figuring out from taking into account that you're currently working, for example, in campaign, and that your lookup is pointing to a venue. We go and figure out the entities that are connected behind the scenes to both entities, and we actually suggest you possible filters. So in this case, one of those filters is the sponsors, because a sponsor is connected to both campaign and it's also connected to venue. So we actually do all that traversing for you, and it's just a matter of coming here to this UI and selecting that. So that's pretty cool, and it's just a matter of selecting it. We also have the ability for you to customize and inject filters on the fly. So if I look at the form properties here and go to the onload event, you probably won't edit that here. You will use Visual Studio to actually edit this. But you can see that we're actually creating a custom view on the fly, and I'm actually passing fetch XML, which is our querying language, passing fetch XML and the criteria, and taking values from the form. For example, in this case, I'm taking, where is that? I'm taking the CRM form event expected attendance and passing that on the fly to my filter and submitting that to my lookup. So that's pretty exciting to have. Okay, so that is that. You also notice that I can change the layout of things in my section. For example, I don't want the labels in that fashion. I want it to be centered. And just like that, I am able to format my form in a different way. I can preview this. Also, something that is going to save you a ton of clicks is that now you can create custom schema from the form editor. So I can do, for example, add a new attribute here. And this is also going to let me demonstrate one of the new features that we have. So I'm going to create a new attribute called country, which is going to be of type pick list. But I want to create this over and over again. I want to use the same pick list for all of my entities, right? Why will I create a particular country pick list for each one of them? So I now have the possibility to use an existing pick list that I already had created. And it's just a matter of selecting country. I can assign my default value, and that's it. I can now reuse that across multiple entities. And just like that, okay, I'm able to add schema from the form editor, and now I have my country here, and it's just a matter of dropping that into the form. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so that is important. We're almost reaching the end of the presentation, so I'm going to try to still show you many of the cool things that we're doing. So I show you how to create new objects. But what is really exciting about this solution stuff is that now you can have layers of solutions built on one on top of the other. Now we have what we call unprotected and protected solutions. Let me just flip back to the grid here for a second. And we have, you notice that we have now this state. These two are in unprotected mode, which means that anybody can still edit those solutions. But we can now package that solution that is going to protect the solution. And when you import that solution into another system, people are not going to be able to modify it. And that's very, very important for ISVs because that is going to assure you and it's going to let you manage things like, for example, upgrade. So your base solution is going to be locked down, but you can still customize on top of your solution. I'm actually going to demonstrate that. So you notice that we have export. This is kind of like exporting the source code of your solution. It's the traditional export that we had in version 4, but we also now have package. And what this is going to do is generate this protected package. So let me just quickly flip here to another org. I already have a package solution just for the sake of saving some time. I'm going to go to solutions, and I'm going to import that. And it's a very simple solution just to prove the point of layering. You also notice that import looks slightly different. I have this protected solution here. I upload that. It's telling me the solution details. Right? It's telling me also the solution version. And we are also going to manage things like, for example, upgrade. So if you are actually deploying a new version of your solution, we are going to be smart enough to actually apply those updates properly. So I'm going to import that. That's going to pop the import customization dialog. It's going to take just a couple of seconds. Have that beautiful progress bar that's actually doing something. It's pretty cool because I actually took one of the latest builds from last week, and the day before, this progress bar was not working. And it's not working, so that's pretty cool. Because a lot of things are happening behind that, not because of the progress bar. All right, so I have that now imported. Let me just refresh my grid. And you see that I actually have this in protected mode. If I open this, I'm not going to be able to edit this solution directly. So the solution definition is locked down. I cannot add or remove components. I cannot even trigger the editors from this grid because it's protected. That's the whole point. But what if I need to actually customize the solution? How do I do that? Well, to do that, you can do that from the default solution, or you can create a new solution with your customizations. You can select publisher. I'm just going to select one here. This is a bug. Actually, not all these publishers should be showing up. So I'm just going to pick one, the one from my org. I'm going to pick a version. This is the version of my customizations. So I'm creating a solution there. I'm going to Solution Components Grid, and I'm going to add an existing component. So I'm going to add an entity. The entity that I'm interested in is called Protected. Protected entity, OP. There we go. Here it is. If I actually open this entity, I can actually see that it has a bunch of attributes already there, and I can add my own. So let's add one here. My custom attribute. Save and close. Okay, so I was able to customize that. What's going to happen when I export this, right? What's going to happen with the intellectual property of the guy that I actually purchased this solution originally from? That is the whole point of solutions and protected solutions. So whenever now, let me just publish this for a second. It's going to take just a minute. When I export that, we're actually going to export only the difference. So we're not going to export the original solution. We're actually going to export the difference, so that whenever you install your customization, we're actually going to enforce the fact that you require this other solution. In fact, let's just give it this a little bit of time. It's publishing. Come. In fact, I'm actually going to navigate now to the required solutions grid and show you that when I added that entity, I actually took a dependency of the other on the other solution. So I go here, look at required solutions, and I can see that I depend on this protected solution. So whenever I need to install this, I better have this other solution installed, because otherwise it's not going to let me install. That is very important for people building on top of our platform. You as an ISV, you as a developer, you as anybody's developing solutions on top of CRM, this is very, very important to actually keep your IP protected and have that locked down. So let me export that. I could have done export a package. In either mode, it's going to work similarly. So let me open that. Let's look at the actual file. Did you remember that we actually had a bunch of attributes for that entity? We had 2 protected attributes, and we had 1 attribute that we just added. So we can see that we're actually exporting the information about the solution. If I now look at the entity, I have it here, and I can see that I'm only exporting 2 attributes here. My new custom attribute and only 1 custom attribute here. That's the only one, that's the one that I just added, that's the only one that we're exporting. The rest of the attributes are not here because they don't belong to the solution. I can see a lot of heads like nodding at it, that's pretty cool. If you actually compare this file with what we used to export for version 4, it was a lot more data, right? This one is, okay, yeah, this one. It's from a sponsor, it's another entity, but you can actually see that we were exporting a lot more data that wasn't necessary, and we didn't really have this notion of layering, but now we have, and that is very, very exciting. All right, we are reaching almost the end of the presentation, and that is good because that means that we're still going to have time for questions and answers. And before that, let me just reference you to these 2 sessions. I mentioned this during my presentation. The first one is right after this session, highly, highly recommended. It's David Schott, the architect of CRM, explaining how we were able to take version 3, refactor that, and being able to put that into the cloud and being able to be multi-tenant. CRM4 is fully multi-tenant. The other one is going to be on Wednesday, going to be with Andrew Bivey, and he's actually going to be showing a much more advanced version of the scenarios that I talk about in this session. And he's also going to be showing you what we call plugins and code on the cloud of sandbox code. So that's also very, very interesting. Highly recommended too. Some useful resources, you can take a look at this on the deck. The Development Center, the Team Block, and the SDK. All of those are very, very important for you. And with that, let's actually open up for questions and answers, and thank you. So we have the mics in the center, so if you can just, move. Right, cool.
Okay, thanks for sharing all the version 5 enhancements. One of the features that we use with CRM when implementing it is aggregating data from multiple backend systems into that single view.
Right.
And I've noticed that when you said smart lookups, I was hoping that you meant smart lookups is that you can pick them up from web services that expose backend systems. SharePoint has a similar concept with business data catalogs. Are you guys thinking of incorporating something like that?
Right. We internally call that surrogate entities, which is kind of like what you're describing, an entity that lives outside of CRM. It might be an SAP system. It might be another CRM system. Yes, we're thinking about it. That's all I can share with you at this point. But yeah, we're definitely thinking about that.
Second part is related to authorization. A lot of the times when all the fields are available, you need field-level authorization.
Field-level security?
Yes.
That's also in the roadmap. That's something that we're also thinking seriously about for CRM5.
Got a question regarding CRM4.
Yep.
Solution we're working on right now needs database transactions. How can I support those through the SDK?
Those are not natively supported in the SDK and in the CRM4 SDK. Something that Andrew Bivey is going to be talking about in his session for CRM5 is that we now support inside transactions. We actually allow you to register your plugins inside the CRM transaction for CRM5. For CRM4, the recommendation will be to use a third party. Well, not third party, you can use a Microsoft product to actually orchestrate all of those calls, but fundamentally the SDK, it's not transactional, so not a very good solution on that front, unfortunately.
A question kind of similar on the role-based,
Yep.
or the field-level security. Are you going to do any role-based UI? I didn't see anything besides one UI up there again on the forms.
We are thinking about having things like multiple forms, role-based UI. So, yep, we're thinking about it.
Version 5?
5. Yep. So, any other questions? I'm actually going to be around at the end of the presentation. If you want just to come by, ask me whatever questions you want. So, feel free to do so. We had another one here. Right. So the question was, what about business intelligence data? How do you actually surface that to CRM? Right. So the answer is that, well, what we have seen our partners do in different ways is that, one, they, for example, use SharePoint and expose both CRM data and business intelligence data, and they actually compose their portals using SharePoint and using CRM as one of the data sources. The other approach that we have seen is to actually take advantage of, for example, reporting services and have reports pull information from both CRM and business intelligence data. So basically having your report talk to various different sources. So that's two ways you can actually do that. For CRM5, we're thinking about more possibilities to actually incorporate that natively, for example, integrating with business data catalog. Yep. Okay, so you notice that we have one of the points was, the question was, what kind of integration points with SharePoint are you planning? You notice that I had this one bullet point about SharePoint native integration. It's mostly focused around document management, so managing documents from CRM that are actually stored in SharePoint and make that transition seamlessly. So it's mostly around document management at this stage. Any other questions? Okay, cool. If you have any more questions, feel free to come by. I'm going to be here around. Ben is going to be around. So thank you.